ما يي موضوع ملي عاشقو يلزال وتحاري إيدخو، لكن من انت موضوع زبان نار جرا ان انجليش به تيروزاهو يي باك جراوند به تيروزاهو انت يي من انت revising the revisionists of Harar history, which is an indigenous defense. بايتي تاريخ زناو اتماحتي بزالاتو تاريخ زناو يزو اوغزو جلو ياشي بزالاتو ازياشو ضدي مخنلي ناشازان انت بايتين ده ما يو هوجي مان انت يقرب لنا زالبان نارا كرا كوت انت يقرب لنا زالا شيشتي النارا زي حسب نيو شيشتي بيت ابانا ما حتى أحدث مديجة لي تلاقى سبب بمديجة للفرقة أزول بايتي كوسو هوجي نقرب هنا الزو بيقدلي لكن يكوت قربنا لنا زالات معنا جنت يلزالو أزياش بي نسم أنا بايتين ده ما ميقل محمد عليت.
اوكي، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. سمي محمد عبد القادر انت الدسابة بحلقه هوجي had topic on revising the revisionists of Harar history be يا أديج لهوخ ما ينت زالين بايتين ده.
اوكي كوتاي عبد الله انت عبد الله عليت.
السلام عليكم، سمي عبد الله شريف انت عن تورونتو بإيجاب زاخنتين يو تورونتو بمزلي خنتين هوجي عن تبزعش خو قربوت سلا هارري هيجوت بانت الله بايقر الزوبة يو قربا زاخ يخون الوايت انت. شكرا.
شكرا كوتهم تكشو موضوع زوبح بس يا بايتلي حيات باك جراوند زي تكشو عن أسينا هو يرتو نعمل محمد عبد الله جيسو آدوا يبي بجيح دفتف الزالاش انتيو عبد الله يبي قال توكو زاخو كتا إسعاد شاج مكتاتب بزيتا وكانتا ما أزو كتباي سوم تاريخ زينا ومتماهت به قدير غازيتاش به زاج عندها سو أزو توكو هو بايتينتا محمد everything هرر به كوسيوم everything هرر به أتاجوت زالاش انتيو ميغل درجة به محمد آم بحمسا everything هرر رو زي قال نسا أديس أبابا بميغل أزونتا لونش داشي و everything هرر به أتاجوت هلا كوسيوم أخا وقت به everything هرر به يدل قالو حديث به محمد دلاغزو ملقي قالا سو يي تاريخو هوجي ذاتو بروغرامو ذكرب سا إمن كرابا أوازو كشو يسحش ياشو استدي عشلما يي تاريخ يلزال بي ريفيجينستاتشي كتبو زال ورقاشو استدي عشلما أحد ورقة كتبنا النارا أزوم السبيز كتبني ورقة everything هر اللاي بحل أزوم ريكومنداش خون نارا تكارو كتا أحد أزوب انت زويا إلى زال ما خم موضوع زو كفون نيليتانا بايتين دا ما من انت هوجي سكيجول تخون زال ميغال انترودكشن انت أزو بحل presentation 1 and 2 انت خون زال ما ميغال ومحمد يكار بحل أزو بحل عبد الله انت يكار بوزال شيشتاين بي question and answer نبرال question answer بحل discussion من نبرال آخر بي conclusion يخون البايت انت so يو زلانسا من انت يي سبب زو من اللي انت زاشني ولزانا goal زو من انت revising the revisionists of Harar يزال بي goal زو من انت بايتي show and validate Harari specific evidence manuscript, oral narratives, linguistics, continuity as a primary counter argument. يلوزال يلي ضد زاشي نسا حجة بحمد سمخ نزو متوك انت كوتاني بين انت community empowerment يو ناش بازان سبب إناش التزيناج ياشو زال شيو نوكي ما نتماحتي كتبايت انت ما Yiminta create awareness among us Hararis regarding the contemporary historiographical attacks on historical and cultural identity and remind our community to preserve our historical records. تاريخاتو اتمحزالاتو متماحد لي awareness لخلق كتا tools وينبرنا كتا أحد هوجي ذكربني يا إنت بايت إنت ما أخا هوجي محمد يكر بازال هوجي نسان نازانا ميغل موضوع من إنت everything هار اللايبيم حد شيش تساتي بيقدلي أو وحري بيقدلي زيد كتب أنت الزول عيب إنت نسان نازانا revising Helois Mercer's claims من أنت تلازات counter claiming إناش تبزاشنيو counter claims of rupture with indigenous truths أخذ من أنت تلازات defeating textual minimalism rejecting the narrow demand for external archival validation rejecting the narrow demand إناش يزينا من أنت أزياج الكربوزال external archival validation أزياج archival validation أنت تبروزال أزو reject motion أنت ناشازانا أزو زلتا validating Harari knowledge أنت ناشازانا asserting the authority of internal documents and oral histories إننا يدينسناو مثبت أنت ناشازانا ما يو Harari validating Harari knowledge أنت بايت أنت ما يو ناشازانا يبقى انت بايت انت شيش تاينا بنتا حزو ياش انت حزو manuscript بنتا كوتاين oral tradition بنتا شيش تاين زالنا شاش بنتا like archaeology بي يقول لي فرقال سيناناي سنبي يقول لي فرقال على ياش بي يقول لي فرقال ياش بنتا متماحت ازانا بايت انت مي هوجي يعاشو محمد ديار نحل مني نبي ناشان يلزالو محمد ديار نحل بايتينتا ما شيشتاين كوفوين نزلت نسا Harari perspective on some Harari historical and social narrations of Richard Kolk and Mohammed Hassan. Richard Kolk wa Mohammed Hassan kala hazayu كتابياش انتيو مرسر محمد يساني بازال قرة كتابياش انتيو contemporary انت حياج على حزايو كتابياش انتيو ريتشارد كولكوا محمد حسن جيسو ذات بجيز كتاباش انتيو especially ريتشارد كولك language بيمزي كتابا انت so ازو بي يسانال ازوستو بمينيلال اناش زريني وشياج على حزايا 1970s بكتبي زينار انت زو بحليم زي كتابا انت ما مين انت يلازر إناي زرين وشياج إناج وينكزنا الشياج أزوستو بمن انتزال عبد الله أزوياش ويارنا حل بيت انت خوجي so ما أخي الانفورميشن كتبي تبزاش خونتان مرسر زالباج فرنساوي مرسر فرنساوي انتيو فرنساوي يبي انت ياشو زال بروجكت حل أزو بروجكت تاعي بنت يدل زال ما أخا كرنتلي يدلقوا بزال مين انت يلزال بي ايك ازيو جروب مان انت باخو يقرا تيماسيو هيلويس مرسر تدل غازات مسلم Ethiopian manuscripts and historical analysis يلزال بنتا درس اياناتشو archaeology settlement and dynamics بنت دل غازات برتراند هيرش historical and comparative analysis بنت دل غازات حياج انت يو خيبه جايزات به وإثيوبيا ذات به يا شوزان هلوس مرسر انت بجه تدل غازات يله بروجكت حليو بروجكت ديتيلز من انت انتر تايب حل كوردينيتورز زي املتشكرون انت ما بروجكت زو كانوا يزمدا ما يا شاخ interactions of medieval Ethiopian studies انت so Emily Chekron inte coordinator zo host zo IRMM CNRS انت هي فرنساوية انتيو so grants you يله grants you funds you يزيدي جو يك بنتا agency national de la research انت ANR يلزال بنتا grant amount zo 410,663 انت. ما من انت research focus study of medieval and early modern Ethiopian societies, especially Islamic communities in the Horn of Africa, topics, manuscripts, historical documents, Muslim-Christian interactions, trade and cultural transformations. ما يبنت ياشوزال جيسوس ذاتهم يبنت تنكازال well funded انتايو years itegaleo project is September 24 benta. It lasts for 2 years. So September 2024 بين زيغلو. So it lasts 4 years. لكن جايزات ومكتب مثلا زيغلو تكشف على هلال 2017 قرب تليندا أزوم زقاحبي محمد يارا نحل. So محمد كفوين أخ يسبقوا أخ بايتين ده.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. سومي محمد انت محمد عبد القادر. هدقر شيرا شاكيسي كود دقيقة تنقرن ياهو ياو جاي إثيوبيا متبه ملتاوا علم درجة بتاريخ زي فيز بأجائب يتيسا المخنزو التواقع يي تاريخ أساس زخانو كتباش ما بين بأحزو باباي سينة أبزاشو جاي أميراج لستينتا يي لستم سمزو زي جدول الشاش والشامي لوزالينتا. Okay, so topic hoji revising the revisionists in that, and I'm talking about the Jadwal, Ash-Shash, and Shami, and we are talking about the reconfirmation of Harari history by Tinda. The Jadwal starts from Amir Haboba and continues to Amir Abdullahi, covering 1,000 years of history. It also shows each Amir's reign. Actually, the Jadwal is about 60 pages of history, but the core is this list of Amirs. It is currently found in the Institute of Ethiopian Studies, and it also is a major source of 17th, 18th, 19th century history of Harar. How was this Jadwal prepared? Okay, this is the Excel version of the Jadwal, which I have converted. Okay, it starts with Amir Haboba and continues to Amir Abdullahi. Okay, so now we will see how it is prepared and how it is synthesized. Okay, so the nature of the document is a synthesis. It is a synthesis of documents on the formation of Harar, its history accounts, its medieval chronicles such as Fath al-Habash and Zikr al-Tarawih, oral traditions which codifies local genealogies and collective memory, and finally oral traditions. The author of this synthesis is Ahmed Shami. Ahmed Shami, Allahu yatraham lahu, Gidir Ali min Naro. He used to speak multiple languages, Arabic, French, and German, and he was a paramount historian of his generation and beyond. His key achievement was, of course, the Jadwal. After 8 years of his publication of this synthesis, a junior French revisionist comes up and claims the Jadwal is an invention, a history construction, and a false meta-narrative, and that there is no mention of Harar pre-16th century in written documentation. This is actually also the view of Emily Chekron. Okay, so you will find her paper in the Percy website, which is a French website dedicated to history, and I've as you can see, I've attached it in here. It is in French, but of course you can translate it nowadays using Google, and then you can understand what is going on. What are the summaries of her claims? She claims that the Jadwal, which is the Emir's list, is a 20th century construction and is structurally inconsistent with other lists. She also claims that there is no mention of Harar in pre-16th century written texts. She also says that the Jadwal is a meta-narrative, which is the invention of all pre-year 1647, leading to one continuous history. She rejects oral tradition, selective rejection of early history, such as Fathul Madinatul Harar and the story of Amir Haboba, and indigenous oral traditions. Because the Jadwal was based on these early documents, she actually rejects all the basis of the Jadwal, okay? After her, her claims lead to the following, okay? She basically diminished the history of Harar to 240 years, okay? She accepts that our history is valid from Ali bin Dawood to Amir Abdullahi. That is about 240 years. And she says the rest is not ours, okay? So this is actually practically erasing about 760 years of history. Some Western researchers such as Cerulli and Wagner came across Amir's lists that began in 1647. She uses their list as a basis for rejecting Shami's Jadwal. The year 1647 is for her the starting point. Pre-1647, as she says, should be void. So she claims that he invented those pre-1647 emirs. So now this calls for an understanding of how Harari traditions are kept for centuries. To refute this, we have to understand how Harari traditions are kept for centuries. So let us say, for example, a manuscript was written in 12th century. Maybe it was in existence for 50 years and gets lost. Okay, this can happen due to conflict or decay. But the tradition and culture of Hararis makes sure that the story continues from generation to generation with intact oral chain. Later, some scribes, say, like, for example, Ahmad Shami, because of impending disaster or war, decides to codify this oral tradition, and this core history will be preserved and transmitted to the next generation. Okay, so the scribes recopy the original from memory and fragments, and they transmit it to the next generation. When we apply this process to the Jadwal, we can see that it is not clearly an invention, because the scribe do not invent, but they use from the same history written centuries ago from memory and some fragments, okay? So the Jadwal is not an invention, but the process of codification, or that means rewriting, and transmission to protect the history of the people and pass it to the next generation. So the Jadwal is not an invention, but transmission. It is not forgery, but coding. The next argument she brings is because the list shows variation from the Western list, she does not trust it. As we have shown, okay, let me show you here. Now, from the mini list from the Dawood dynasty, okay, this is our Shami's list, and this is what I have gathered from Cherulli, and both agree on the Amir's list more or less, but the years are somewhat different, okay, at the start of the dynasty, but it is actually the same in the case of Abdul Shakur bin Yusuf, okay? They both start, the Aushamis and the Cherullis start at exactly 1783. So for her, this is sufficient for her that the variation that she gets in the years is sufficient for her to distrust it. But we claim that the structure of the Amir's list is consistent between the Western scholars and Shami. The final counter we have is what happened at 1647, okay? Now, she claims that her Amir's list only starts at 1647. So, did Harar suddenly emerge from the air at 1647? She is actually erasing Harar being the capital of the Adal Sultanate. Okay, so for us, there is, if we accept her methodology, then there is no contest to what came before Ali bin Dawood, okay? So we claim that the gap is an illusion. Harar was the capital of the Adal Sultanate, Al-Sama dynasty, Walasma dynasty. The 1647 date just marks a dynastic transition to the local emirs, not the creation of a new entity. Shami did not invent continuity. He corrected the myopic 17th century lists by reintegrated the well-documented Adal period. The second claim of Mercer is that there is no mention of Harar in the 16th century documents. Pre-16th century documents. We counter this by saying that we have internal Harari documents and oral histories that show otherwise. We will come back later to the internal Harari documents and oral histories, but with regards to the external chronicles, we need to know the general reasons why Harar is not mentioned in pre-16th century, and does the absence mean Harar is a recent city? First of all, it is not only Harar that is missing in the texts, but you will not find major capitals like Ausa, Dakar, and others, okay? Even Ifat fortresses are not mentioned in the chronicles. You may ask me, why is that? Now, in general, Ethiopian royal chronicles are concerned with warfare. So they record campaign routes, specific battle sites, and rebellions. And whereas Yemeni and Red Sea writers were concerned with commerce, they record coastal ports, custom stations, and tributary polities paying taxes. So inland cities that do not directly interface with the sea trade were invisible to them, and peaceful religious centers or towns outside the immediate area of these campaigns are also invisible to the royal chronicles. But of course, we have the stones, the archaeology, the coins, and Harari traditions that speak the truth. We have archaeological evidence, which is that Harla habitation around Harar predates the Adal Sultanate. So she was saying that we don't have a written history before 1647. This directly implies that we are a recent city, okay? But archaeological evidence shows that Harla habitation around Harar predates the Adal Sultanate, which with early mosques and settlement mounds proving a long urban history. We have Harari oral tradition. The internal memory of the city records the migration of Awawadir, the establishment of Gay, and the 7 abandoned Harla settlements. The conclusions that we can say is the physical and cultural evidence far outdates the written records of foreign scribes that she holds dear to. Now, however, there is a debate about Amdasion's 14th century chronicle mentioning the Ge'ez word get, maybe refers to Harar. Some scholars link get to gay or guide, and that the naming is right as it corresponds to the Adal Empire, which geographically is plausible. Okay, so she is saying that we don't have Harar in pre-16th century written documents, but there is a debate going on that get is one word that you may find in Amdasion's Chronicles of Amdasion. Okay, so we will see what that is. Okay, first of all, we have linguistic reasons. The word gay, which is similar to the word get or guide, which is Giz language, and also there is a geopolitical fit within the Adal's sphere of influence, because in the chronicle, Gate and Guide are mentioned in the Adal core region during this area. So geographic placement is consistent within the location of the city. However, the identification is not certain, as no Muslim writer confirms the claim, and that the chronicle has no details. Okay. In general, modern scholars are divided into two. There is cautious support for Get being Harar by Taddasa Tamrat and Hussein Ahmed, and there are people who are skeptical about this, like the famous Cheruli. Okay. But the one sentence takeaway that we take from this is, Get is a plausible early name for Harar, but not securely identifiable without stronger contextual evidence. Okay, so why are we spending our time with get? This is because, as she is saying, that we don't have any mention of Harar in pre-16th century. There is some indications of Harar being mentioned, as the word get may be linked to Harar. Okay. Our third defense is about the meta-narrative, i.e., she claims that the Jadwal is a meta-narrative, giving the city a linear, exhaustive, over 10 centuries long past. And she criticized the text as being artificial. Okay. Now, our counterposition is the 10th century past is not imposed artificially. It arises because Harar maintained multiple consistent historical registers. These registers are medieval chronicles, early Islamic accounts and dynastic lists, oral epics such as Fathul Madinatul Harar, and local conserved manuscripts. Far from being a modern construction, the meta-narrative exists because Harar's intellectuals never stop recording, reciting, copying, and preserving their past. The fourth point is that she rejects the oral traditions that underlie the Jadwal. Okay, but you just have to travel to Harar to see that we have world-class textual indigenous knowledge as a gatekeeper of Islamic faith in the area for centuries. We have famous manuscripts, Qurans, we have hadiths, we have Fathul Rahman, we have Sharaful Amin, we have Fathul Nabiyul Mustafa, we have Shafi fiqh works, we have zikris, and so on. We have biographical, genealogical information on ruling families. We have so many documents, historical narrative, and the list goes on. So how dare that she does not, how dare that she claims that Harar does not have a 16th century written text, as the Islamic books predate this. One thing is sure, she doesn't know that our tradition, our oral tradition of Harar is very strong. I have listed here some 13 oral traditions. They include Nasab Silsila, founding of Harar narratives, saintly biography, and shrine lore, Awaj. Women's oral memory rituals such as Maulid and etc. Two of the most important oral traditions of early Harar are the tale of 7 abandoned settlements and the arrival of Badr and his companions. This is described in Fathul Madinatul Harar. I will read parts of the Fathul Madinatul Harar for the sake of brevity. And with Sheikh Badr were 405 men, people of knowledge and asceticism. The people of land gathered around them, and by them the city of Harar was founded, becoming an abode of Islam. Sheikh Badr came to the land of Harar accompanied by 405 of his companions, men of learning and righteousness. They settled in the city, spreading knowledge and establishing the practices of the religion. Their arrival marked the beginning of Harar's order and the straightening of its affair. Dismissing Fathul Madinatul Harar by saying that we do not have written history before 1647 as a legend ignores the historiographical genre of manaqib, sacred biography. The fact functions as a spiritual charter of the city, preserving the institutional memory of Sheikh Abadir's arrival at 1216 and the city's theological foundations. It is a source of social, not just factual history. Our final counter is Harla, which contradicts the 1647 start theory. Archaeology provides a material rebuttal to textual skepticism. The Harla civilization, 10th to 12th century, provides indisputable evidence of sophisticated Islamic urban center in the region with mosques and global trade links. The material evidence aligns with Shami's deep history and contradicts the 1647 start theory. Okay, Harla had sophisticated Islamic urban center, so this basically contradicts her 1647 start theory. So the summary of the debate on the Jadwal is as follows. Mercer's critique, the first point that she made was the Jadwal is a late construction. Our counter argument is that it is a synthesis of ancient oral and written traditions, preserving deep history. She claims that it is an artificial linear meta-narrative. We say that it exists, and we have shown that it exists because Harari intellectuals never stopped reciting, coding, and preserving the past. She also claims that sources like Fath al-Madinat al-Harar are fake anachronisms, but we say that they are living texts with this, where the storyteller updates the frame, but the core foundation means is ancient and true. She claims that it relies on legends such as Amir Habuba's Tariq, and we say that legends are essential repositories of cultural identity and collective memory. This is on the Jadwal, and then we have also on Harar, okay? On Harar, Mercer's view is that Harar textually is absent pre-16th century. We say that Harar is present in Harari oral and written traditions, but known as, but also in Get or part of Ad al-Ifat in Amdazion's chronicle. With regard to the city origin, she implies that it is founded, she directly does not say it, but she implies that it is founded in 16th century. And we say that it is, of course, ancient. She says that there is no precursor to Harar, but we, of course, say that Harar is a direct continuity of Harla. Now, to summarize our pointers, the debate is basically about the pre-16th century. Okay, so we have institutional memory, oral traditions, and manuscript ecosystem. We have archaeological continuity, and we have some external corroboration to say that Harar is pre-16th century. Harar is, of course, true and it is proven. So I would like to give my recommendations to Mercer. First of all, she must respect the methodology of indigenous people like Hararis, and just not judge them solely by Western positivistic standards. She has to value Ahmed Shami's work as a monumental effort of cultural preservation during a time of existential threat to Harari identity. She should read deeper. The Jadwal is more than a list of names. It is a map of Harari soul, connecting the local city to the universal history of Islam. My final conclusion, the Jadwal is not an invention, but a codification. Ahmed Shami's work is rigorous, multidisciplinary synthesis of medieval chronicles, geopolitical reality, and deep oral tradition. It is a valid work of indigenous scholarship that stands up to critique. History in Harar is both lived and written, a tradition that continually updates its memory while keeping pace with its origins. Thank you. Mohammed Abdulkadir, 2025.